Alright, so in this one I want to talk about quirks and what they truly are and where they come from, because as of this recording we're about 351 chapters into the series and also in the final arc, and we still hardly know much about these things, to be honest. I mean, we know what they are at their core. They're the superhuman abilities that the people of the My Hero world have, or at least 80% of them do, but outside of that we don't really know much. Like, for example, where did they come from and why did it suddenly just start affecting humanity like around 100 years ago or so? So the little information that we do have is shown to us in chapter 1, and it says it all began in KK City in China with the news that a bioluminescent baby was born. After that, exceptional individuals began popping up all over the world. The cause was unclear. Time passed, and the exceptional became the norm. Fantasy became reality, and at present, 80% of the world's population consists of superhumans with special abilities. So this is like, unfortunately, only one of two things where we get insight into where quirks come from within the series. Talk about the other later on, of course, but let's just go a little deeper into what we're finding out in the first chapter. So it's implied that the very first person to have a quirk was this bioluminescent baby, aka the glowing baby. And believe it or not, this is based off of an existing story. The very same story that a lot of battle manga is based off of. And that is Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. Series like Naruto, One Piece, Attack on Titan, and many others have drawn inspiration from this story. And it might be like a rite of passage to mangakas or something to adapt this at least slightly, because in the preface of this book, it says that it's referred to as the ancestor of all romances. Now, while those other series that I mentioned borrow way more from this story than actually what Horikoshi is here with My Hero, let me just go over exactly what he is adapting here so that I guess he can just say that, hey, you know, this is partly Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, so you can't say that I didn't do it, guys. I'm in the club too. But anyway, in the beginning of the story, there's this bamboo cutter named Takatori, and randomly one day he comes across this glowing bamboo stalk, and he finds within it there's like this small baby, and he winds up adopting this baby and eventually names her Kaguya. And to make a long story short, it turns out that Kaguya comes from the moon, and after this war of like the simps happens because of her, she eventually like returns to the moon. But the whole luminescent baby here, which is implied to have the first quirk, represents Kaguya, or this is at least Horikoshi's partial homage to the Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. Now, since Kaguya came from the moon, does that mean that quirks come from the moon? I mean, I don't know if they exactly come from the moon, but it is possible that they have extraterrestrial origin, especially because in one of these first panels that we see while quirks are being described, where it says, and the exceptional became the norm, we see a depiction of space, you know, around Earth, with like the sun eclipsing over it. So does that confirm that they have extraterrestrial origin? No, but in my opinion, it probably does, because that's like the only explanation that kind of makes sense, other than just it randomly just happening one day and the fantasy becomes reality because it just happened, that's it, and there's no further explanation to it, which always could happen. And to be honest, I'm kind of thinking that's what Horikoshi is eventually going to do here. I really wouldn't be surprised if we never find out where quirks come from, because, you know, like I also said, we're coming towards the end of the series and none of this stuff has had any light shed on it yet. But that's just kind of like the pessimistic part of me thinking that. The optimistic side does think that we will get an explanation as to what quirks are, because I do think that there has to be some grand reveal and ultimate wrap up to these quirks in general. But anyway, let's go a little further, because the other possible explanation that we get to the origin of quirks is revealed in chapter 158, and it's like through this overhaul narration, and it says exceptional abilities, the mysterious mutations that suddenly manifested in humans. According to one theory, a previously undiscovered virus was spread all over the world through mice, but there was never any hard evidence to support that idea. This all led to one particular chain of reasoning about the countless exceptional abilities. And then we see Little Overhaul saying it's a sickness. So I guess this is possible. And Horikoshi did put this here for a reason, or one of two reasons. The first being that it's the truth, because Quirks do kind of act like a virus in a way, because it started with like one person, or at least it was implied that it was. And then throughout time, it slowly started affecting more and more people until we are currently into the series where 80% of the population has it. And this could also lead back to some extraterrestrial origin, like, I don't know, some kind of space virus or something that came down and affected rats first and then they spread it. Or if there was some kind of thing that landed on Earth and produced the quirk virus. I don't know, maybe rats were in that vicinity first and contracted it that way. But another reason that Horikoshi could be showing us this is just to give Overhaul more development and just to show us more of his motivation and reasonings behind the way that he is. Because I guess it could just show that he heard one of these theories and it kind of warped him into thinking that there's sickness and it's a disease. And also goes into how he's like a germaphobe and all that stuff. And that's ultimately just where this begins and ends. And the whole part about where there was never any evidence to support this idea is the truth. And it's just a nonsensical theory, you know, similar to a lot of the ones that we see on social media, which unfortunately breed IRL Overhaul type individuals. Now, going back to me saying that a part of me does think that, you know, these quirks and their origin will be fully explained eventually, because in series that do have these big fantastical abilities attached to them, some of the times we don't get the big reveals until like the end of the series, such in case with like Attack on Titan and Naruto. So does that mean that My Hero is going to have a similar outcome as to where in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 chapters maybe, where Horikoshi just jam packs this exposition into these chapters explaining the origin of quirks and what their ultimate destiny is? I think it's likely, because I do think that Izuku is going to have like this revelation or something like that, especially once the quirk singularity comes full circle. And I think that's another thing that has to do with quirks in general, because that has to be addressed, because over time, as quirks hereditarily mix, they become stronger and stronger until the point of where they become too powerful, and humanity will eventually end because of this. And while they keep saying that it's like a theory in the story and it's not guaranteed and everything, and because I assume that it is an inevitability and that the only way to save humanity, at least for the long term, is to remove quirks from existence. And I've talked about this in many videos, but I think Izuku will eventually get One for All and All for One and like combine them together and then use, you know, whatever ultimate superpowers that he gets at that point to remove quirks from existence, and then maybe sacrifice himself at that point or something. But it's possible that once he does this and he fully unlocks all of the power of One for All and All for One, and maybe he unlocks like some kind of Akashic records of the My Hero world or something, or maybe he speaks to some kind of super vestige or something like that, because I would say that maybe Yoichi could tell him more about the origin of quirks, but it doesn't seem like even he knows, and it's implied that he and his brother All for One are one of the first quirk users. But this could ultimately lead to it being revealed that they come from space or something like that, which I just think seems likely at this point. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Let me know what you think about quirks and where they come from. Does it even matter to you? I know some of you don't even care about this stuff, or I would say most of you probably. I'm sure you guys are just more interested in if Bakugo is going to kiss Deku, which he probably is. But if you like the video, guys, please give it a like and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.